What does the future of IT management really look like, and are we ready for it? With Microsoft pushing further into app orchestration at the OS level and RMM tools increasingly weaponized by attackers, traditional architecture is under pressure. Today, Elliot Hyman joins me to discuss the next steps for secure IT operations. We're going to also delve into the complicated reality of AI, why productivity gains are unclear, how leaders are misaligned on readiness, and whether entry level jobs are quietly disappearing. Welcome to the Business of Tech Lounge, the live version of the Business of Tech podcast. It's Wednesday, June 4th, 2025, and I'm Dave Sobel. We'll be welcoming questions and comments throughout the show, so please submit them in chat. If you have a question, we'll happily respond to it. Now, I want to thank Sales Builder, our Patreon sponsor, whose support makes this show possible. Focus on your IT sales workflow with the power of automation and visit them at salesbuilder.com. That's BUILDR.com. Now, a reminder, I am watching that chat and will take questions live during the show. Now, Elliot Hyman is the CEO of the Lyra Technology Group, a division of Evergreen Services Group that includes a portfolio of managed services providers. Previously, he served as CEO of Wolf Consulting, Evergreen's first acquisition, and he holds a bachelor's degree from Vanderbilt and an MBA from Northwestern. Elliot, welcome to the show.
Hey, Dave, thanks so much for having me today.
I'm excited to have you. I so enjoyed our conversation when we discussed last for the recorded interview. I knew you'd be fun to have on for these live shows. Now, I'm going to dive right in because we were in prepping for this. I'd sent over to you some of the new news around what Microsoft is doing with Windows orchestration. For those that aren't familiar with this, Microsoft is launching a Windows Update orchestration platform that allows app developers to integrate their update processes right into the Windows 11 framework. The idea is to create a unified system for scheduling and managing updates across devices and allowing independent third-party developers to plug in. The end result, Microsoft expanding Windows Update to handle third-party applications. Now, I had somebody who spends a ton of their time thinking about tools and strategies and architectures. I kind of felt like you'd have some thoughts on what Microsoft dictating control over third-party apps might mean to the current ecosystem of tools.
Yeah, I mean, so as consumers, this feels like a movement that, you know, you go back to the iPhone, right? 10
Right.
plus years ago, whatever it is. It's always been this sort of very controlled update experience, controlled download experience, right? Windows tried to do the Windows Microsoft Store, whatever they're calling it. Um, and anyone who uses an iPhone would probably say that's a pretty clean update experience, and a good user experience. So, I think Microsoft going back to the store and now with this is trying to sort of copy a lot of what Apple had done with the ease of updates, the ease of finding software, of buying software. I think it's a good thing for the end user, and MSPs will figure out, as our job is as tech changes, figure out what services do our customers need, and how do we make their businesses better. So I have no doubt we'll adapt to this as we have with a lot of the other changes that have occurred.
Well, I have every confidence of your ability to adapt. I'm more just curious of the thought of the philosophy and the architecture here, right? It makes sense to me if we think about what's happened over on the mobile side. We've kind of both. You mentioned the iPhone. Android does a pretty good job of that too, right? In giving an OS level of updating. If we think about the Windows ecosystem broadly, third-party developers certainly can write their own update scripts, but Microsoft offering something really does feel like it's solving a need, right? This is kind of a centralized thing. There is a need. Every updater, needs to have a thing. Every software developer needs to have a way of doing this. And Microsoft offering a set of tools saying, hey, optionally, you could do this makes a lot of sense to me, right? But what's intriguing to me is the kind of crushing blow it might have to these third-party patching applications, right? Is as well, if Microsoft can do it, why do I need you, right? These third-party applications. So I would think about it like as you think about this, how architecturally do you feel about like leaning into first-party for this versus the perceived control that these third-party application patch management tools would give you?
So it's interesting. One, I think to your point about it being optional, right? So there will be some that probably opt in. I think the article that you sent ahead of time mentioned, will major publishers like Adobe, participate in this? Until they're at 100%, it's not a 100% solution. I also look at, whenever things like this come along, I try to think about what have we seen that's like this before. So I think about like Windows Defender, right? And as Defender got better, there were questions of does it replace some of the outside stack stuff, and for some it has, and for some it hasn't. And the market and the customers, the Windows universe is so large and so complex that there'll be room for all of these solutions. Would be my expectation.
That a little bit. One of the things that, MSPs traditionally have thought a lot about is this idea of standardization, right? The idea of the more standardized tools that we can roll out, the better that we can manage our customers' environments and keep that stability. Give me a little bit of a sense, because I mean, I'm with you on the idea of like, hey, there's a solution for everything. But at the same time, if you're trying to standardize your toolkit for that level of efficiency, you'd want to lean into a very standardized stack here. But by your own admission there, you're sort of saying, well, I'm going to design the solution that makes the most sense. Give me a little bit of a sense of the way that you view that tension between standardization versus the ability to deliver those individual solutions.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's one that we think a tremendous amount about, because uh, you know, we go back 5, 6 years. So Evergreen's been operating the MSP space now for about 7.5 years. I would say for the first 5, 6, we caught a lot of flack on our lack of standardization across the
Right.
businesses, right? And that each individual business that joins the group, has their own stack and they make their own technology decisions. I think within an individual, customer service unit, it's really important to have standardization, for all the reasons that we all know, for efficiency, for what we deliver to our customers is the combination of technology, and people and know-how, right? So you can't know everything.
Right.
Maybe one day when we get our Neuralinks implanted, we'll be able to, but until then, you can't know everything. You can't do everything at a level of excellence that customers want to pay for. Um, so, I think that will continue to be the case. I think when we think about organizing work, it's, keeping the number of things that an individual person or team needs to know deeply, at human scale. So we do that, via our business units, our businesses that are within the broader Lyra umbrella. But I think there's also some of our larger businesses that have practice units, where maybe they specialize in a different stack. So if you're matching, people to software, technology, and sort of know-how, that's what customers pay us for, which is that solution, that tech solution.
No, it's interesting. I think you said something, and I kind of want to unpack it a little bit to make sure that I'm understanding it correctly. Because, and I love the way you talk about like sort of the business unit, customer unit, like the way you're thinking about it that way. When you're working with new customers or onboarding customers, or customers are making changes to their technology stack, are you even potentially across the sort of the Lyra brands? Are you looking at potentially moving customers from one to another to find the right specialization? Like saying, hey, this customer now has different needs. We're going to move them over here to this different group. Are you thinking about it that way because you've achieved a certain level of scale in the organization?
Um, Customers are really good at a lot of things. They're not really good at being told to move service providers because we want them to.
Fair.
Um,
Fair.
I wish it were that easy. In fact, actually, that's almost the entire story of M&A in the industry, is that there's so many options for MSPs that when people make a choice, they're making that choice for a reason. And the more you mess with that formula, the less likely there is to be a match. And so, uh, one of our sort of early ahas was like, hey, we don't define what's better. The customer defines what's better. And I think in the industry, you see a lot of folks who say, well, we're going to change all these things out for you because, this is what we believe to be better. Uh, and the customer disagrees and they leave. And so,
Right.
uh, you know, uh, sorry, can you
Well,
repeat
no,
the initial question? Because I got,
you've led me right into the next question then. So because
Mhm.
in a way you've also re-answered the standardization question in a way. The customers are not necessarily going to allow that imposition from their perspective of a standard stack. If you're saying a customer saying, I don't want to do it that way, they may have, they may lean into another bit. And I think that actually sort of leads us to kind of my next set of thinking, because if we're thinking about the technology stack, I quip these days, hey, I made it 12 minutes into a broadcast without using AI, right? So that's like the longer I can go without having to bring it up, that's a thing. But in fact, I think that's the next portion of this conversation. And I kind of want to get your take a little bit on three sets of data points that I've just recently tracked across the show. The first
Mhm.
is a recent Kyndryl survey that noted a disconnect between the business leaders and the IT executives, where 16% of CEOs believe their technology's infrastructure is insufficient. 42% of IT leaders share that view, right? So the business leaders are thinking, oh, I'm in good shape here. And then I couple that with a report from Signal Fire that says they're tracking a reduction in entry level job opportunities for new graduates and less experienced workers. There's actually been a 5.8% increase in unemployment for new college graduates, and new college hires are down 50% from pre pandemic levels. And then we'll layer this on with the last one, with the University of Chicago and the University of Copenhagen reveal that the use of AI may not actually be enhancing productivity. Their analysis says that AI users only saved about 3% of their time. Right. So it's interesting. We've got this combination of, hey, we may be hiring less because of current conditions, but AI may not be giving us productivity gains. Oh, and by the way, executives are expecting a lot out of this where IT leaders aren't doing it. Now, bringing that to, you've been thinking about this a lot. In fact, Evergreen and the Lyra Technology, how you guys recently acquired a company that specializes in AI. Like, where are you thinking about the best applications for AI in your stack, and where makes sense and where doesn't?
Yeah, so this is something that I get made fun of for how much I talk about and espouse AI usage.
Well, Elliot, this is a safe space because I'm a
Is it?
believer.
Okay.
So this is a safe space.
And that's how I describe it. It's a religious conversion, right? In a lot of ways, like, a year ago, I was, you know, uh, probably disappointed that more people didn't want Copilot, and that was my exposure to AI. And over the last 6 to 9 months, have delved much more deeply into using the sort of AI powered software products, and specifically ChatGPT, because I think that OpenAI is doing, um, that. I found it the most functional models, and product is the ChatGPT app, and so here's the thing with like measuring. I think today AI productivity gains. People are really slow to learn and adapt. I think that's, if you look at technology adoption relative to what you imagine being possible, right? So a lot of us in the tech industry are spending a lot of our time thinking about these tools, how they can be used, how they can be, um, how they can make our businesses better, more efficient, improve customer experience. Customers are busy doing their lives, right? They're being
Right.
lawyers, they're being wealth advisors, they're being, they're manufacturing, they're all the different, taking care of people, our healthcare customers. That's what they're busy thinking about and doing. And, you know, I mean, I saw even in my own experience adopting AI tools into my workflow, the biggest barrier was me having time to figure out what can this thing actually do? Like, what can it actually do for me? How can I use it? And so I think these early stages right now that we're in are, you've got a small number of power users, early adopters who are leveraging it a lot more. And the vast majority of the world is just, I saw an interview that Sam Altman did where he said, if you told me that we had a model as powerful as O3 out in the world, I would say the whole world is different. and we have that model. It is amazing. I use it all the time. I use it every day. But I woke up this morning and I made my eggs and the sun rose and, it was rainy, like nothing had really fundamentally changed. But I, I am, to use your word, a believer that it is coming. The exact timing is hard to say, but there's going to be the adoption curve. If you look at some of the numbers on the adoption of this stuff, it is, faster than any technology we've seen. And I think it's going to really accelerate. And as people learn to use it and integrate it into their businesses, which is a big part of what our companies want to offer SMBs, I think it's going to be massively disruptive.
Now, for if you're watching this live, you've got a question, throw it in the chat box. We'll definitely take any questions. But I know that. So the first one I've been thinking about is okay. You've identified the same sort of thing way my thinking is too. Is there's an opportunity here to work with customers and start infusing the technology into it. And my thought process has been there's also work that needs to happen on data readiness, right? That if you're going to actually do this effectively, you've also got to spend a bunch of time making sure customers' data is actually in some level of organization. I don't want to over rotate on that. I'm not saying like you have to make sure every little piece is in a perfectly formatted relational database. It's not that tight, but you certainly have to understand what you have, who has access to it, who should, what's protected data, what's not protected, what are the rules around it. As you're thinking this out, are you viewing this as a area where you're going to lean into kind of custom workflow work with customers, or are you thinking more along the lines of finding products that do a good job and implementing them? Like, give me a little sense of what opportunities you're looking for with the customers.
Yeah, it's all of the above.
Okay.
I would say it's like 30 years ago. If you said, how are you going to bring the internet to customers? It's like,
Okay.
we're going to breathe the internet, right? And that's kind of the world we live in today. And I think it's the same thing with AI. So we're going to bring in AI powered products, or, uh, we already have companies selling products that essentially give customers access to all the major LLMs, and we have companies that are doing automations for customers, that leverage generative AI and more traditional AI as well, that are massive unlocks for these customers, provide a tremendous amount of value. We have examples of automation projects where uh, we're saving clients 10 people of work. And so, when I think about the future of the industry and what gets me super excited about the potential here is, you think about the vendor stack for a typical SMB. You've got, maybe you use a PEO. You definitely have an accountant of some sort. You definitely have an attorney. And I think historically, you go back to the beginnings of the MSP industry, we were probably at the bottom with like the guy who takes out the trash, right? And then you
Right.
went, you know, a little facetious, but and today we probably sit below your attorney and your accountant, but above most of your other vendors. And I think that done well, your technology service provider can move, above your attorney, above your accountant as the most valuable vendor for an SMB. And I think that's going to be made possible by some of the stuff that AI and automation could do for SMBs.
Are you already starting to see a pattern of criteria for like what successful projects look like, or maybe customer traits, like ready customers to create successful customers? Like, what are the patterns you're starting to see of like, yeah, these are the areas where we know we can do a pretty good job so far?
You can do a pretty good job with um, anyone who is, working in an all digital workflow that is in any way repetitive, which is a
Okay.
lot of people in our economy. There's an opportunity there. The process that I was describing earlier, where we saved about 10 FTEs for a client, was essentially an order entry process. Required touching a bunch of different systems, reading an email, entering data, checking it, whatever it is. Pretty typical office work, right? Um, and we were able to create an automation that completed the entire workflow in the time that it took the human being who had been doing the job or continue to do the job, but her job changed a little bit, just to read that initial email. We could run the whole process. And so, um, you know, there are with creativity and good question asking, and a willingness to sort of tinker and experiment, I think a huge portion of office work is going to be done via AI, and automation is not a controversial topic, but I am
Right.
definitely converted to being a believer of that.
Well, so reminder for watchers, listeners, and watchers: if you got a question, you hear it live, throw it in chat, and I'll throw it up there. So the other portion of that that's interesting to me is particularly as guys, I think we're both thinking about the operations side of this. There's a lot of the internal operations of a technology organization that can get replaced by AI, right? There's a lot of ticket processing, there's a lot of categorization, there's probably a bunch of diagnostic stuff, there's a bunch of there's even resolution stuff that can all be automated away. Like, how much of that are you thinking will get converted over into AI powered automation rather than me just calling it AI? Like AI powered automation, like how much of the typical MSP work are you seeing going that direction?
Today's current work, the majority.
Okay.
I think we're talking 70-80% probably of current work. But the way that I think about it is, you know, it used to be if you were a farmer, you had to right dig every hole, and
Right.
I'm about as unagricultural. This is a bad choice of analogy, but whatever the things are that people have to do to plant and harvest by hand, they were doing those things, right? Um, and over time, we developed tools that allowed us to be much more efficient, use less uh, uh, work that required less intensive human effort, frankly, safer and better in a lot of ways, more productive. And you know, the world didn't. We didn't have. You read all these things about, hey, the world's going to be 50% unemployed or whatever kind of stats they throw out there. People find a way to be productive. They find a way to contribute, and they find a way to earn. So there'll be an adaptation in our business to different types of work, but I don't see the number of people being employed by MSPs over time or in technology more broadly decreasing. I see that increasing, but the work they do will be different.
Yeah, I'm with you, and this is two completely non-farmers talking. I watch Clarkson Farm on Amazon, right? But I'm not doing better than that. But I'm with you on the theory, right? The idea is like the farmer expertise hasn't gone away, but the tasks that they're doing, the digging, the I don't throw seed on the ground directly. I have machines that do that. Oh, by the way, I can actually like automate the planting of that, but I'm still planning where it goes. Like I'm with you. So that leads sort of to the last area that I was really interested to talk about, particularly if we think about the data we just saw on entry level people and the changes in hiring. Like,
Mhm.
how is this changing your approach to who you're hiring, and what are you seeing out there in kind of the labor market now?
Yeah, I mean, the labor market, listen, we've been through quite a ride over the last 5+ years in the labor market. There was this thing called COVID that happened. I don't know if you remember that a few
We
years
all keep
back.
forgetting about it. Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't that long ago. There's, it's been a really interesting process in the labor market. Ultimately, there's not enough people. So I'll say there's two things. One is there's not enough people with the tech skills that we need. And
Okay.
I say that not just the tech skills, but also the soft skills, the creativity, all those things. There's not enough of those people. And, I don't see a clear path to there being enough of those people in the near term. Um, and I think we layer on that the fact that, like, for our companies, we want to be hiring, top quartile, top decile talent only. And so, you know, uh, those people are always very hard to find, and very hard to get and to keep. And the way we think about it is we want to do that. So we our strategy is built around being extremely competitive in the labor market, regardless of the sort of circumstances or the environment.
Now, how much of that are you thinking is, and I'll use like the classic framing of buy versus build, right? The idea of like if you go straight to the labor market, you can get an advanced person, you buy them, right? They come with the skills versus the I'm going to take somebody and I'm going to invest in them and I'm going to grow them up. Like, how much are you thinking about the difference between buy versus build in your hiring right now?
We are always build first.
Okay,
Um, we believe in, we want to be the best place for people to spend a career. That's the type of companies that we want to be. So, uh, we are developing, we're investing in developing people constantly, and we're increasing that investment. We're building out different tracks that folks in our businesses can be on to continue to develop their skills. Um, and plan their careers. And we're also building out more and more programming for our folks that we call something we call Lyra OS, which is a bunch of different things related to knowledge sharing across our businesses. But in particular, there's a very large technical education piece that we're working on. So we're we will absolutely go out and buy talent that we need. I mean, I think that's a necessity of business at times, but our preference is to invest in our people for the long term and have them grow with us.
gotcha. Well, I've got questions coming in, so I'm going to take the first one here from Steve, who's asking which companies are creating AI native apps for MSP internal use. Elliot, are there any particular tools that you've been looking at in the MSP space that are meeting those criteria for you?
Uh, yeah, I mean, so we have a bunch of our companies that use Roost, Hats AI, a new company that our former CTO started called Synthrio is doing some really interesting things. And there's many, many, many more. I mean, the one joke I've made recently is, the best thing to say before you ask someone for money is AI right now. So everyone's trying to do something related to AI. But those are three that we're seeing pretty, growing adoption with.
Yeah, the folks at Movilla have done. I've had on the show. Like they've built a machine learning AI driven project management piece. Arguably, the PSA players themselves have started making differing levels of that. Both Atera, Synchro, and SuperOps all made recent announcements in terms of their investment. Both ConnectWise and Kaseya have made announcements about theirs. I think it's differing level of success in terms of how deep that integration is, but arguably it's somewhat early in terms of the product rollout. I'll ask you, like, put a bit of a follow-up question there. How much are you thinking about the need to build some of those tools yourself versus buy them out there? Like, are you thinking you're going to have to do a lot of building to deliver the AI solutions internally that you want?
Define building. So, if we say customization, building, we have a Lyra analyst that actually one of our human analysts made that's in ChatGPT, and they built that in ChatGPT. I think we're going to do a lot of building within platforms, but we're not going to build platforms. I don't think there's multi-trillion-dollar companies that are going to invest hundreds of billions and are investing hundreds of billions of dollars in this stuff.
Right.
And we don't see that as where we play best. But we will certainly be in the agent building game. I expect that we'll be building agents for ourselves and for customers very regularly.
Okay. So there's not a great set of definitions here. So let's muddle through it a little bit to try and get a sense. My thinking then is if I asked maybe a bit of a lightning round, like you're probably not calling APIs directly at the core models, for example. You're not writing software that does that. I'm
Correct.
calling. Okay, so that makes sense. You're probably a yes for like, hey, customizing Copilot or ChatGPT or like doing those kinds of. So that would be a yes.
That's a yes. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And then it would, because we're stacking on top of that, like customizations of bots within like a Roost or like those. We get into all of those would be yeses for, hey, we do that kind of work, right?
Yes.
Okay,
Sure.
cool. So that gives me a little bit of a sense because you're right. And each level of that is a different kind of build, and the API direct call stuff. Having done it personally is kind of messy and hard. So, well, Ellie, as I kind of wrap up our time here, I want to get a little bit of a sense of like, hey, you're watching the market just as much as I am. Like knowing our crystal balls are kind of broken and cracked. Like, what are the things you're looking for in the next, say, 6 to 12 months that you're looking for, like one or two big trends that you're keeping an eye on right now to say like these are the important ones that are going to come out in the short term?
Um, that's an interesting question. I would say I'm not sure it's even you know, one's probably new and one's not. It's the things that we've been talking about, right? It's AI. It is the 1A. Like, I mean, I've used this analogy before, but it's 1994, it's 1995. Like, we're about to see an explosion in change and in value creation that we haven't seen in 30 years. It might be bigger than the internet. So I think spending too much time on anything else is maybe missing the plot, frankly. And for us, the other piece is always talent. And so, if you ask where do I spend my time, it's thinking about AI and it's thinking about talent, or two of the big ones. And I think that uh, you know people plus technology is what we sell, right? So I think spending our time there makes sense. I don't know
Oh,
if
I
that's
think
a
that's a perfect place to end it because I'm with you. Like that thematically, that's exactly what we do. Elliot, I always enjoy talking with you because you always come with really interesting ideas. If listeners are interested in learning more or reaching out, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
Yeah, they can shoot me an email. It's ehyman@lyratechgroup.com. And I would love to talk to anybody in the business or not. I love meeting people and talking shop. So
Well, I always enjoy having you on to talk a little bit of shop. This has been great fun. Thank you for joining me for the live show today.
mm,
Now, I want to preview an interview that's coming out this weekend. I sat down with Stephen Hinch, who's a seasoned expert in the MSP delivery space, to explore the relationship between innovation and corporate structures. He delved into this idea of the curse of the corporate business model, highlighting how the pressure from predictable profit stifles disruptive innovation in large organizations. Here's a preview of that interview. And you've got a book I wanted to ask you about. You've kind of put this all together in a book called Winning Through Innovation, and you describe the curse of the corporate business model. Tell me a little bit about the curse and what we're all fighting here.
Yes. So a major corporation, multinational corporation, typically has to respond to the needs of their investors. And investors, particularly Wall Street investors, expect you to make predictable profits every month and every quarter. The problem with innovation is that innovative ideas, particularly really disruptive innovation ideas that are going to take you down a new path, they're not something that's going to contribute to this month or this quarter's profits and revenues. And they may not actually return any investment until a few years down the road. So corporate executives have to respond to these investors, and they're trying to do everything they can to get that new innovation out, even maybe before it's ready, because they want to generate revenues. So that's the first thing, that corporate metrics don't really reward investment in new untried ideas that are going to take a while to pay back. Second thing is that managers don't see the rewards commensurate with the risk. Now, if you're in a startup company and you're very successful, you can become a multimillionaire pretty quickly. That doesn't happen very often, but it's a great inspiration. In the corporate world, if a manager leads a project that's successful in innovation, they may get a few hundred stock options, they may get a promotion, but if they're not successful, their career is permanently derailed. And so most managers don't see the reward being worth worth the risk. And there's usually in the corporate world, there's very little motivation to have to take that risk. You don't get penalized for not taking it. And the final thing, the third thing in this course of the corporate business model is that what I have found is that managers in the corporate world are not as they don't like risk as much as somebody in the startup world. They don't mind doing incremental innovations that will return rewards pretty quickly, but any kind of disruptive innovation, that's not what they want to do. And if that kind of person that really liked that kind of thing was in the corporate world to begin with, they left and went to startups. So you can still be innovative in the corporate environment, but you just have to understand how to deal with those three obstacles to success.
Steve is a former TeamLogic IT owner and has extensive knowledge about our industry. He's got some fascinating insights into the future of our space. Now, my Patreons already have this interview now if you want to get access early. It's a benefit of supporting the show. Visit patreon.com/MSP Radio to sign up and get access right now. The interview will drop on the YouTube channel and podcast feed this weekend. Now, I want to thank Sales Builder, our Patreon sponsor, whose support makes this show possible. Focus on your IT sales workflow with the power of automation and visit them at salesbuilder.com. That's BUILDR.com. And vendors, you too can get your name mentioned on the live show. It's a simple monthly subscription. Visit patreon.com/MSP Radio to learn more. And listeners, here's what you can do to support the show. Like, share, and follow on your favorite platforms. Really does make a huge difference, and it's the number one thing you can do to help out. Or you can support directly on Patreon with our Give What You Want model. You set what you think the content is worth, and you get access to videos early. If you have a question and are listening to the recording, send it in at question@mspradio.com or in the chat box and comments below. I'll answer right there. Thanks for joining me for the Business to Tech Lounge, and I will see you next time.